I used to handle a 2 billion peso infrastructure.
Okay.
No, throwing money at the problem is the worst thing you can actually do. Not just for yourself, but also for the business in general. You really have to look at it from an evolutionary standpoint. You start off with something that's well proven, and then as you understand more about the problem, as you understand more about the business, that's the time you start evolving.
Fractional is where you can learn from top consultants in AI, software engineering, growth, and design. In this episode, we talk to Paul Alcala. JP is Fractional Solutions Architect and Chief Technology Officer who has managed over 2 billion pesos of cloud budget in the Philippines. Recently, he was a Partner Solutions Architect for SCN at Amazon Web Services. Before that, he was an Associate Vice President, Head of Infrastructure and Special Projects at GCash. A builder at heart, he's passionate about making people's lives simpler with technology and has been helping customers solve some of the most challenging problems for over 20 years. When not assisting customers, JP can be found at home either sipping a good cup of coffee, tinkering with IoT projects, or building crazy contraptions in Minecraft. In this episode, we talk about pillars that make a great software architect, solutions architecture pitfalls in startup versus corporate environments, obsessing over what the customer needs, and how to solve problems through listening. This is Alexis, your co-founder from Swarm. Thanks for listening.
Hi everyone, I'm Paul Alcala. You can call me JP. So I'm a solution architect / so many other things. Right now, what we're doing, I'm just enjoying my life.
What are some of the companies that you've worked at?
So the most recent one is AWS. So I've been there for about 2 years. Prior to AWS, I was with GCash for about 4 years. And then I was with Globe for a few months, because eventually I moved to GCash. And then before that, I was also with a string of other startups like Ayana and my very own business, CodeFlux. I was also with Orange and Bronze. They're now called StratPoint, but I was there before it was known StratPoint. I'm not a computer science graduate, by the way. I'm a chemist.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I'm a BS chemistry graduate. So I practiced my degree for about 2 years, but due to health issues, I had to leave.
Got it.
Yeah, then I decided, okay, I'll pursue my other passion. One of my passions is science. The other one is in programming. I eventually transitioned to the IT industry in the hope of becoming a game developer, which, looking back, I'm glad that I'm not a game developer, given what's happening today. I'm now just doing consulting. Some companies need fractional CTO. I also do that. So I help companies not only make sense of where they are, what do they need to do, and also what their technical architecture is. It's not just a one-track thing. It's really marrying different lenses of the same business or whatever it is that I'm looking at.
It's like business and engineering together.
Yes.
And that's what an architect is all about.
Yes.
Speaking of that, what makes a great software architect?
There's 3 pillars to a great architect. So this is something that me and my contemporaries have discussed so much for so many years. How do you make the next architect? How do you train the next architect? So there are 3 key pillars that you look at. The architect as a developer. The second one is the architect as a business analyst. And then the third one is the architect as a project manager. So why do you need those 3 pillars or those 3 aspects? Basically, as an architect, you are the middleman. You try to bridge the gap between business, tech, and everything else, right? You need those 3 aspects because, one, as a developer, you need to understand, okay, this is what are the technologies available to you? What are the tools and solutions available in the market? Number 2, as a business-oriented guy, you need to be able to understand what are the business needs, what are the customer's needs. Actually, it's more important that what you understand exactly what the customer needs, because that needs to translate into the business. Then the third one is project management, because how can you now deliver on the needs of the customer? Or you need to be able to see, okay, is this realistic? Is this going to be within budget, within a certain time period? Do we have enough resources? Do we have the right skill set, and so on? So it's really a marriage of those 3. Yes, I know it's a lot of skills, and it's if you look at it it's actually a jack of all trades, master of some. Before usually you'd hear master of none. Here, but I would usually say no. You have to be master of some. You need to be master of at least one of those three pillars. Because if not, you're not going to be well-rounded enough to be able to tackle the various problems or challenges that will come your way. I've seen a lot of architects struggle simply because they lack one of those three.
One or two.
One or two, yeah. In one of my previous jobs, there was a developer who unfortunately had to meet me. Had to meet me.
The final
So
boss.
he was proposing this solution. So he's being groomed to be a solution architect. So after that discussion, long story short, he said, if this is what an architect entails, I don't want it, because my questions are not just straightforward developer, because he's a guy who's being transitioned from being a developer to being an architect.
Yeah.
But you have not even touched on the business side or even the project management side of things. So now you're lacking on the perspective of, okay, is this something that's within cost or within budget? Is this within timeline? What is its impact on the overall business? Those are perspectives that you gain through experience, unfortunately. There are
Trial and error.
yeah, trial and error is one of them, but really exposure is a big factor. There are only a few people who are successful enough at a very young age. And that even those young people requires them to be well exposed to the different facets of solution building or solution architecture.
And that's what makes it so hard to hire.
Yes.
Look for solutions or software architects.
Yes, it's hard. There's also no straightforward mentorship program around it.
No boot camp.
There's no for so many years I've tried to build a boot camp to create to train new architects.
Yeah.
But I think the best approach that I've found over the years is not to do a boot camp per se, but rather through mentorship. In the same manner how building architects undergo through their training. So eventually they have to go into something like a fellowship.
Okay.
Similar to how doctors do it. You need to be guided by someone more senior. And eventually you gain those other facets. So I think that's, for me at least, that's the most effective one, most effective way. The most recent architect that I've mentored, we went through that kind of process.
Okay. And how long is that process usually?
When I hired him back then, he was a developer, so he has the technical skills. But the most important part there, the reason why I hired him is that he has people skills. So I already have two pillars already. What he needs now is the last one.
The project management.
No, not the project. Yeah, sorry. Yes, the project management part. So, no, sorry. The project management part requires the people skills.
Okay.
The business part is what he lacks.
Talking about the business side of things, talking to founders or corporates, right? What are some common pitfalls around software architecture, especially for someone who has recently raised a round of funding, like let's say a Series A? Right? Like, do people typically think about software architecture during that stage?
Normally, so especially when you've raised a lot of money, right? Yes, they'll be able to raise the funds, but they will be lacking a good engineering team. Or if they have an engineering team, it's a very small team. Either that or the more common approach that I've been hearing lately is that they're going to outsource it to someone. So there are trade-offs to that, especially if you're looking to building something within a certain time frame. Now, building software, I'll be upfront here. So building software is not cheap.
Yes.
It's expensive. It's expensive primarily because you need skilled people. And the most frustrating part here is that time equals money, right? But engineering is all about problem solving. You cannot put a time. You cannot just simply say, this can be solved in 200 hours. More often than not, when you hear a developer create estimates, it's usually wrong. I, in all of my career, I have never seen a project delivered on time. If there was, and I've seen some, yes, they'll deliver it on time, but there are going to be compromises.
I see.
At the end of the day, actually, engineering is a bunch of trade-offs. You're going to be trading off something for something. You can't have it all. It's now a question of what is the most palatable, what is the most appropriate at that point in time.
And how do you prioritize?
How do you prioritize? Because later on, whether you like it or not, you're going to address some of those things. You may have put off a certain feature just to be able to roll it out or to roll out your first MVP, but you will need to later on develop that. Or, for example, you built this, but it doesn't scale.
Mm.
So for
How
now,
about for that scenario, right? So you built an MVP, you raised some funds, got the Series A, you already have something that doesn't scale. What would you say to those kinds of founders or people?
you have to really invest in the engineering side of things. You cannot escape it. Otherwise, it's going to be an expensive lesson down the road. I always hear a lot of, especially those who are not well versed in the tech world. It just takes only 80 hours. Can we deliver this by this end of the month? But going back to what I said earlier, the whole practice is revolves around problem solving, which means you can't really put a number of hours per se.
Mm.
You can, but you will need to trade off something.
How do you evaluate whether someone is a good problem solver or not?
You will have to evaluate how well do they understand the business aspect of it.
Mm.
Someone may be a good developer who can create a great algorithm or can write fancy algorithms, can write something that's so optimized, but he may be out of touch from the business side of it, or even from the timeline side of it. So what if, for example, you're on a tight deadline, and the developer says, "No, this has to be done because we need to optimize this further." Yes, it's again going back to what I said, trade-off.
Mm.
Is it okay that you release it now and then work on the optimizations later? Or do you optimize it now up front and then take the hit early on? So again, there's no straightforward way of answering it. It will really depend on what you are gunning for.
One interesting signal that I find that is almost always an indication that someone is an expert problem solver is that they ask really good questions.
Mm-mm. That's also another part. So business is one, looking at the business problem, because at the end of the day, if it doesn't match the business requirements, what the hell, right? The second one is asking the right questions, because again, this is a problem-solving industry. It's a problem-solving practice. So for you to do problem-solving correctly, you have to ask the right questions. You have to frame the questions properly, especially if you're trying to discover, okay, what does the customer really want? So framing your questions makes it in such a way that you can uncover certain things that you would normally not.
And in that scenario, right, like who's the customer? Is the customer, the founder you're trying to consult with? And also taking into consideration the customer of the founder, right?
Usually the end goal really is, of course, the customer of the business.
Yeah.
Okay, not necessarily the customer of the founder, but customer of the business.
Mm.
Because at the end of the day, it's a business. It's not charity, right? So you want, you want more customers. You want to bring in money, at the same time bring value to your customers, right? Usually the interface, quote unquote, to your customer will start off with the founder. The founder will have this idea. They probably done the research. They probably said, this is a good niche or good business to build on.
Mm.
So they will be your first. As you uncover by asking questions, you start also building your customer profile. I'll give one good example. This is something that I've personally experienced way back, about 12 years ago, I guess. There was this startup who has an idea to implement, I think it was a mobile app. So I said, okay, we'll build it for you. Okay, so this is the price. Okay, we agreed. Then we start developing the whole thing. Then during the early part of the development, during, I guess, the first quarter of the development, we were already calling it out. This is not going to work. this is not going to work if you're going to push through this path. But the founders insisted that, no, this is what we want. This is what the customer wants, etc., etc. So I said, okay, if you're really insistent on that, then we'll build it the way you want. Now, when we finished the whole thing, that's where they realized that you were right, that it's not the cost, it's not going to fly. And the sad part there is that they didn't want to pay.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah,
that's not good.
that's not good, right? That's also another thing. If you as a startup, you are not in touch with your customer, you just have this great idea, but you're not in touch with your customer, then you're not going to be bringing any value. You're not going to be building a business. It's just an idea.
Yeah.
It's just going to be something for show, and not a real business.
That's what separates the adults from the the teenagers. Speaking about costs, in a startup environment, how do you approach that now, right? Like in the modern era, as a software or solutions architect, like how do you usually think about that? Because I know you've been at AWS, you've done a lot of the partner training as well for the agencies and all right, and you're an expert in containerization, Kubernetes, those kinds of things. From a technical perspective, you can geek out here. What would be the ideal cost-effective approach for most startups, you would say?
So the first thing I would advise most startups would be use proven solutions already. Don't go fancy with microservices. My God, if you're not, because I mean, I for quite a long time, ever since I've started reading about microservices, there's a lot of hype surrounding it, not realizing the fact that there's actually a big operational overhead to running a microservices architecture. It's not all bells and whistles. You better start off with something that's a monolith and that is well proven. Don't go straight to microservices because the only reason why you would want to go to microservices is if you are addressing certain scalability issues. I say certain because even if you have a monolith, you can technically run it at scale. So people have been doing that for years. But if you have a very, very specific problem that, okay, this cannot be solved by anything other than microservices, then okay, go. I'll give one good example.
Can you explain? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I'll give one good example. Okay, I actually saw this one time. Somebody posted this in LinkedIn. PayPal apparently uses an approach to handling billions of transactions daily
Okay.
with only a 16-core CPU, just one server. Billions of transactions. And how they're doing it, they were using a 50-year-old algorithm, a 50-year-old paradigm. See, 50 years old, and yet it's still very, very much applicable to today. So it's a proven solution that works well at scale. So that's what I mean. You don't need any of those fancy stuff when you're starting up. What you need to focus on is, okay, we need to deliver this in a cost-effective way, in as little time as possible, and something that you can evolve over time. Because in the reality is, one of the nice things about this industry, about software architecture or IT architecture versus building architecture. In building architecture, once the building is done,
That's it.
that's it. You can change it. You can change it. You want to change it? You tear down the whole thing. But in software architecture, everything is malleable. You can change it. Something is not working, change it. You need something more, just add more. You can look at it from an evolutionary standpoint. So your architecture, you expect that to evolve over time. Usually when I at least the last one that I built, I told my team, actually I bet them last year, told them, you know what? That thing that we built together, I only rated that for 5 years. Because after 5 years, I have to look for something else. Because you're going to come to a point wherein you're at a scale that you cannot solve it through that. You need something more robust. And I was right. So, you really have to look at it from an evolutionary standpoint. You start off with something that's well proven, and then as you understand more about the problem, as you understand more about the business, that's the time you start evolving. You start putting it, okay, how do I now put things like, okay, does microservices make sense?
Mm.
Do I now use something that is more cloud native, or do I use something that is a pre-built already, or maybe go to an existing vendor that has that solution already, so that I don't have to build it anymore. So those factors or those considerations come into play as you grow. But at the early stage, go with the proven. Go with something stable.
Let's say when you're in a scenario where you're already there, made bad choices in the beginning,
Mm-mm,
or maybe you're at a corporate, right?
mm-mm.
Where there are different solutions deployed and stuff. Contrasting between the two scenarios, right? What are typical approaches that a solutions architect would do? Like, is it like just going through full migrations just to solve the problem and throwing money at it? Or like, is it about optimizing the different areas? What's your opinion on that?
So I'm not a fan of throwing money at the problem. I'm really not. Yes,
Very expensive.
yes. I used to handle a 2 billion peso infrastructure.
Okay.
No, throwing money at the problem is the worst thing you can actually do. Not just for yourself, but also for the business in general. Because you're going to be burning money, to be honest. Now, the other option is, or the other perspective here is that you use the developer approach is, okay, we'll just rewrite it in Golang, for example, or in Rust, because it's much more performant than Ruby on Rails or PHP. Okay, so now you're telling me, okay, we're going to throw away 1 year's worth of work to replace it with something new, and that's something new we don't even know if we're going to cover all the bases. Because when you build something, so of course there are business rules, business cases, and all that are built into that. And of course you expect people to come and go over time. So if you're just going to say you're going to just rewrite it, you're going to be throwing money into the problem as well. Because now you're going to be throwing engineering time into it, into something that, okay, how long does it take versus we just keep the existing, we just make it run, or evolve it to make it better. So that's another pitfall. There are cases wherein it is actually absolutely valid to rewrite
Okay.
or to
What are
replace
those
the existing.
cases?
I actually handled one scenario like that. So I was CTO for Ayana for about 2 years. So we were building the remittance business.
Mm.
But the remittance software that we have, the platform that we had, nobody has expertise on it. When I came on board, it was already there. And after about a year, the guy who built it left. And no one has any expertise on that stack. And not only that, okay, we tried to make it work. However, it was so difficult. We were encountering bugs that we cannot fix. In the remittance business, by the way, time is money. If you cannot pay out your customer within 15 minutes, usually the customer will walk away. That's a lost sale. So my boss and I talked about, okay, we cannot go on like this. So I was able to convince him that, hey, we need something better, and we need something that can be maintained in-house over time. My boss agreed. So I told him, okay, we will rewrite this in 2 months. Give me 2 months. After the 2 months, let's roll it out. Then let's see. So we were able to roll it out in 2 months. So it was not complete, but it's enough for us to be able to
What stack did you
to
change?
to start. Yeah, basically bootstrap, not just bootstrap, but it's enough for us to let frontliners, to let our partners use the system.
Mm.
Okay.
Like the core
Yeah.
flows.
Just the
Yeah.
core part. I said, okay, let's just focus on this one. And let's be very specific on this. We using a very proven stack. We use Django for it.
Okay.
So at the time, my guys were not really well versed in Python. But because I know that Django is easy to pick up, Python is relatively easy to pick up. My guys were able to pick it up in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Then we went to development. After 2 months, we already have our minimum viable. Then we rolled it out to our partners, and after a month of use, we saw 10x growth.
Oh,
10x or
10x?
100x? Sorry, 10x or 100x? I forgot how
100.
big. 10 or 100. It's one of those, but it's big. I mean, that's orders of magnitude much better. And after that, the frontliners were recommending to use our system versus our
Okay.
other competitors.
Oh, wow.
because because it was so easy. Because the way we implement it is very simple. Have you done remittance? Have you remitted money to someone? Whenever you send money, right, you're given a reference number. In reality, what the frontliners do, because usually the recipient does not know from which remittance company it came from, they usually have this one computer that has several systems installed in it, one for each partner.
Oh, wow.
One for each. So they have to search each and every one of those systems for
time,
that one.
yeah.
Takes time, unless the recipient knows from which sender it is. Okay. What we did was very simple. We provided just one search bar. What we do at the back end, we ask all of our partners who has this reference number. All at the same time. We ask who has this reference number? And then we get an answer and our SLA is within 10 seconds. You have to answer. The frontliner will already know. Within just a few minutes, they'll be able to pay it out. That simple. So it's a focus on understanding what the customer needs, the experience of the people who are going to use the system.
Yes, I love that.
If you give your customers or your partners a really great experience, they will use you. They will use your platform like crazy. And they will use it very happily.
Do you see the same scenario for corporate environments? Like, how different are the problem areas there as a solutions architect versus in those such as you have just described in a startup environment?
So in startup, the one thing I like about startups is really the agility, because you can make those decisions upfront. There's not much alignment. There's not too many layers or too many collaborations involved. But once you grow to a certain scale, now you have to align your idea, your vision, or whatever you have to do across so many pillars. Like for example, since I was handling infrastructure, I also needed to collaborate with security. I needed to collaborate with project management, with the developers. There's so many aspects to it. So solution architect for a startup will have lower friction, okay? Meaning they can implement things fast, on the fly, versus in a larger setting, in a corporate setting wherein it's very structured, there's a lot of people to talk to, so you will be in a lot of meetings. It is unfortunate,
It's
but
inevitable.
it is inevitable, yes. But you need to create those alignments across. Now, it's a question now of, okay, how do you make those alignments efficient? Usually, when you grow at a certain scale, you use that agility. So I'll give one good example. If you look at AWS, actually, the decision-making inside AWS is quite fast. So that's why if there's something that wants to be implemented, it's quite quick. It's quick. It's compared to corporate standards, to traditional corporate standards. You still need to talk to a lot of people. Don't get me wrong. You still need to align with a lot of people. But the way things get rolling there, because there are certain, there are established mechanisms already on how to be able to get your ideas across. Or if you want to implement something, there are already mechanisms. It's well documented, the processes that you have to go to. So that you know already, okay, this is the timeline that you need to, the timeline that it takes. I doubt that any of the big corporates here have that kind of machinery already in place.
It's like a super well-oiled machine.
Super
right?
well-oiled.
Plus, like,
Yes.
the layering of, the popular rituals and What's the core value of user or customer centricity?
Yep. So customer centricity is a big thing, especially in Amazon. It's the number one rule, the number one leadership principle. You have to be customer obsessed. It's not just customer centricity, obsessed. So that means everything that you do, it has to be for an end customer, or you have to think about the end customer. So since it's that perspective, it changes the way you think about it. It changes about the way you look at doing product development. So one of the things very frustrating, to be honest, with a lot of the things. For example, mobile app. You develop a mobile app. Are you using that mobile app on a day-to-day basis? If you cannot pinpoint your frustrations on your mobile app, no matter how good it is, then you're probably doing something wrong. Because that means already you've become so accustomed to your mobile app that you can't see any more improvements. So there's a part wherein you really have to think also like a customer. And actually the best way to do that is be a customer.
Use your own thing.
Use your own thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So JP, when we're building for people and we want to be customer centric, like Amazon is, right? You really need to understand the problem really well.
Yes.
And in our case, I guess as consultants, we want to apply that same process. How would you advise, consultants, fractional CTOs to be good at peeling the problem slice by slice?
Okay. So let me start off with a very obvious thing, is that you have to listen. You really have to listen. So I'll give one good example. So just recently, I helped a friend, actually my wife's friend, because my wife's friend came to me asking for help on doing trainings for their developers. So sat down with them, asked, okay, what's the current state of your business? How are you doing right now? And all that. So I let her talk. So listening is a very important skill, because you have to listen. Okay, these are the things that, okay, she's saying. Does it make sense? What she may be saying that is a problem may not necessarily be the actual problem. So as it turns out, as I was listening, okay, and I was taking down notes, it seems that this is not a training problem. It's a people management problem. So I told her that you can easily solve this without even going to training. You just need to offload your tech lead, because your tech lead right now is doing too much work. And your tech lead is also your current subject matter expert. If that person is doing a developer and that person is also doing project management and being an SME, they're going to be burned out. So offload those job roles or job responsibilities from her. Then let her do the mentoring. So rather than get me to mentor your people, which I do not have expertise in your business, why not have her instead mentor, but offload her workload? Remove some of her workload from her. So that means hiring a dedicated project manager, hiring a dedicated
business analyst,
just to offload, so that she as a tech lead can focus on being an actual tech lead, which includes mentoring. In that aspect, you already now start to peel what those layers, because you now start to, by listening intently and listening and taking down notes deliberately, you start to uncover what are those things. Then you try to see, okay, is this really what the problem they are presenting? Or is there something else? And that something else can only be uncovered by not just listening, but also asking the right questions or probing the right questions. Have you done this already? Have you done that? Have you tried offloading? Then at the same time, okay, you also have to look at this part of your business that it seems that you're lacking on sales. Have you explored outside the country? Have you explored the different aspects? So they have not. So after that session, so she was thanking me about for the whole thing. But yeah, bottom line, really have to listen, ask questions, a process, of course, whatever it is, that's the only time you can give proper recommendations or do a proper solution. Another example, I met with this other company. I met the CEO of a furniture company. She needed to understand how the business is operating, but all of the data are all over the place. So as I asked further and further, okay, then they were giving me, okay, they already talked to these vendors. So the vendors automatically recommended the CRM, which is actually the right approach. But as I asked further, okay, where are you right now? What's your budget? How are you doing? Then that's where you realize that, okay, yes, CRM may be the right solution for this company. It's not the right choice at this stage because
There's a preceding step.
they're still not yet mature enough to be able to handle a CRM
Mm.
because they're so used with Excel. So another aspect to that is you also have to look at their existing. What are the current practices? Because what other consultants would do, or what other solution architects would even do was, okay, here's your problem. Okay, this is the right solution for you. Not understanding, okay, how do you now train your people?
There's a lot of
Yeah.
empathy and change management
Yes.
involved, right?
Yes, you need to empathize with the users themselves because that's a big change. Why not, okay, rather than look at changing, why not make use of what they are already used to and then work from there, right? So in the end, we settled, okay, what you just need is actually just simple Google Sheets. You don't even need a fancy CRM. Just need a place where you can dump all of your data and then just have another program just extract those things and then turn that into a dashboard. That's simple.
I think a lot of great consultants ask questions that help the business owner like map out the process and take a look again and then evaluate from there what the correct solution is
Hmm.
versus presenting the solution right away
Hmm.
and just making sure they close the sale.
Yeah, that's also another thing because actually a lot of vendors that I've met has that mentality, especially the salespeople. I want to close this sale, I want to close, and they got gunned down by me. Because I know that you want to close the sale because I have a very large infrastructure and I have a very large project. Yes, I know you want to. I even once told one vendor, why should I even go with your solution if I can write it myself? Yeah, I'm a developer. I also have the expertise with the product that they're offering. The only reason why I'm exploring that product is because I don't want to build it myself.
Mm.
I want to offload it to someone who has much deeper expertise than me. But it came to a point wherein, okay, why should I go with you? Right? And that's a problem actually. That's a common problem among salespeople. Just because you have a quota doesn't mean that you just push and then you achieve your numbers. No. It's a question also of, are you bringing value to your customer?
Exactly. Yes.
Right? If you're not bringing value to your customer, what the hell, right? You're doing a disservice to everyone.
It's the metrics.
Yeah,
So,
if you're metrics driven, I'm sorry. I'm not, because I'm not a metrics driven guy. Yes, metrics are important. Metrics are there to guide, not as this is my
That's it.
score.
and all be all. It's not
That's not an end all be all. Because let's face it, sometimes the metrics are not even realistic. Or sometimes the business is, the landscape is changing. So the metrics don't apply.
And sometimes the leaders don't know that, or like they're too slow to.
Sometimes,
Evolve.
they're too slow to react sometimes, simply because there's they have a different perspective on things. Getting that perspective of how do you bring up or bubble up those problems all the way to leadership, you need a proper mechanism for that. So, which a lot of companies that I see don't have that. You will usually see it actually among the rank and file or even middle management, that they don't want to give feedback because they don't want to antagonize the leader. That's actually wrong. If you're not going to give the right information, if you're not in the position to antagonize, then that means you're not bringing value.
But that's already antagonist, right? That's just
So, oh yeah, maybe it's
keeping
too
them
harsh.
accountable, right?
Maybe not. The term is too harsh. Antagonize.
Mm.
If I can rephrase
Healthy
it, maybe
debates around what the correct metrics
the
should be,
feedback.
right?
I guess the feedback loop.
Mm.
If there is no proper feedback loop, the right information will not get to the right people. It's always going to end up in wrong decisions. Decision making is just garbage in, garbage out.
Let's focus on the pillar of being a software engineer or a developer.
Mm-mm.
What makes a great developer in your mind?
One is that they have shown that they're master of their craft. So that means they have a certain level of expertise that it's hard to match. You can be a very, very, very good C++ guy, or one of my friends actually, he's now part of the C++ standards.
C++
yes. Standards
Wow.
community. but yeah, because he eats C++ day in, day out. And he's really dedicated to his craft. A lot of the good folks that I know don't even have a computer science background. Surprisingly.
Some are dropouts.
Yeah, some are dropouts, finished a different course. I actually had one applicant before who was a nursing grad. And he's a great programmer. I don't know what happened to him though, but just goes to show that
It's not about the degree.
it's not about the degree. It's not about going to school, because especially now that knowledge is pretty much something that you can just Google. It's a Google away. However, being able to master that is one thing. Another one, great developers are great problem solvers. They look at a problem and they'll be able to do exactly what I did on the business side, but this one on engineering problems. And they're also very practical. Because again, you may be a great developer who can create awesome, fancy algorithms. But if it cannot deliver business impact, or if it cannot bring value to the business, then you're doing a disservice. That's not a great developer. So you really
you
have
just
to be
having
very
fun?
practical. No, having fun is optional. So there's some great developers who have fun with coding. There's some who just treats it as a job. So I guess another part that would separate the good and the bad developers would be not just on being a loner, but also collaborating with others. Actually, building software is a very collaborative effort. That means you're able to play well or collaborate well with other people. Because, for example, if you have a very large project and you cannot even collaborate with, like for example, if you're a backend developer, you can collaborate with your front-end developer, there's always going to be friction. There's always that human element. Most people think that it's a very logical industry or endeavor. No, engineering actually involves both logic and creativity and human aspect. And the human aspect of it, because again, at the end of the day, you have to work with other developers too. Even if you're a rockstar dev, if you cannot work with others, then some would even treat you as a liability.
If you're an asshole,
Yeah,
it's not good.
it's not good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, being nice to people goes a long way.
That sounds like you've been through
Yes.
many
I have-
experiences.
I have had many names in the past. Some are good, some are bad.
No,
It's-
to be. That's the best one. 2 billion club.
Yes, the 2B thing.
To be or not to be. Okay. So JP, you are one of the best software architects in the country for sure. You've worked at world-class companies and manage billion peso budgets. What's your advice to all the fractional software architects out there?
Build that practice of getting yourself up to date. You don't have to be at the forefront of everything. You don't have to be. I'm not at the forefront of AI. Like, I'm one of the users. I'm an end user rather than a builder of AI at this point at least. But it's important to build that practice because being a consultant or being a fractional means you're also up to date about the trends, about what's practical, because you will hear a lot of noise. Everybody wants to be at the forefront, right? But yes, you can be always at the forefront, but if it doesn't translate back to delivering value, then there's nothing to talk about. What else? Tenacity, I guess, because you will get a lot of resistance, especially when you're building solutions. You will encounter a lot of challenges, not just on the technical side, but also on the people side of it. Be tenacious. I mean, especially if you believe in what you're doing is right. The third one is be kind, because yes, you may be at the forefront. Yes, you may be, but if people think you're an egotistical maniac, no, nobody will want to work with you. It's important also to be able to work with people. But if you are also having a hard time working with other people, which I totally understand. I know of a lot of really great architects who are autistic, for example. But I guess the one thing that you would see among all of them is that they're all kind people.
All right. So build your expertise, not necessarily being at the forefront, but be updated as a consultant. Be tenacious. Building a practice requires a lot of empathy, especially for the people you're collaborating with.
Yes.
Right. And finally, be kind. Okay. Thank you so much for being on the show, JP.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right.